Good morning, and welcome to White Bear Unitarian Universalist Church. We are delighted to have you here, both those in this space and those attending virtually. It's good to be together, a community of youth, adults, and children sharing the values of courage, reverence, and compassion. I'm Dana Boyle. I use the pronouns she, her. I was on the board of directors, and now I'm on the lead minister search committee. And if you have a request for today's meditation, please place it in the bowl over there or in the chat box before the opening hymn. A special welcome to those joining us for the first time. We're glad you're here. Please fill out a guest card to let us know more about you by finding the link in the Zoom chat box or by finding a yellow card at the Welcome Center. It's a joy today to celebrate with Reverend Sarah and Reverend Jack that they have received full fellowship with the Unitarian Universalist Association. This completes the preliminary phase of being fellowshipped as UU ministers and is a very significant milestone in their careers. They and others who received full fellowship in the last year were honored at last month's UU General Assembly. We invite everyone to celebrate this joyful accomplishment and blessing by enjoying celebratory cake right after the service. We'll give you a little more time between the end of the service and the beginning of in-person social hour small groups and all ages post-service centers so that you can get some cake, which is in the atrium, and take it with you. And I just want to point out that Linda and Peter Quinn very generously donated the lovely cakes that we have today. Also, off script, I want to ask everyone by a show of hands or by placing a note in the chat box, how many of you have seen more monarchs in the last week? Well, that's heartening because they're a little late coming here this year and I haven't seen many in my yard. That's great. Join us for a community potluck on July 20th at 5:30 p.m., followed by a youth game night from 6:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. for youth entering grades 7 through 12. We will also have a parent circle and childcare for young children available from 6:30 to 7:30. Sign up in the atrium or through the chat in the e-news to bring a dish and or help with setup and cleanup. And we're still looking for a couple of volunteers to help build a home in Bayport, July 20th through 23rd, from 8:30 in the morning till 3:30 in the afternoon with Habitat for Humanity. No building experience is necessary. Contact Jeff Ronta for more information and to sign up. Welcome to our church. Together we grow our souls and serve the world in love.
Come in. Come into this place which we make holy by our presence. Come in with all your vulnerabilities and strengths, fears and anxieties, loves and hopes. For here you need not hide, nor pretend, nor be anything other than who you are and who you are called to be. Come into this place where we can touch and be touched, heal and be healed, forgive and be forgiven. Come into this place where the ordinary is sanctified, the human is celebrated, the compassionate is expected. Come into this place. Together we make it a holy place. I'm Reverend Jack, and I use he, him pronouns. Welcome.
Good morning. I'm Mina. Hata, and I use she, her, hers pronouns. One of the joys in my life is to house sit in New England in the winter months for friends. They seek warmth and sunshine, and I get to be in their home for a couple of months, enjoying the New England oceans and winds, but escaping the bitter cold of Minnesota. I arrive the day before their departure, get the keys, know how to feed the cat, make sure to know how to shut off the power in case there's a nor'easter. But upon my host's departure, I am utterly alone. Alone on this island, alone in this house. It brings on a frightfully and intense feeling of loneliness for the familiar. My spouse by my side, my friends, my home, its surroundings. I've learned to sit with this unease and loneliness for a while. I see it as part of the travel journey. And COVID has made the transition from loneliness to part of the community that much harder. Before COVID, just like here, there were many social activities on the island. And I took advantage of all of them. Memoir writing at the library, cooking with like-minded people, Arbor Day at the school with the gardening club. All this disappeared, and I found that after COVID, that I had to get out and make my own connections. But I found this easy to accomplish. You see, folks on the island are used to transitions because of the high level of tourism. People are coming and going all the time, coming and going. And they are very welcoming to the stranger, to the new person in the community. They are also very accepting and helpful of marginal groups in society. Again, tourism brings on a wide variety of people, and characters are common among those who live and work there. The locals are always trying to find creative ways to address social issues with people needing help, such as mental health and affordable housing. So, my strategy was to call up individuals and schedule a hike on one of the many conserved areas of the island. Maybe we walk dogs or just walk to get in the fresh air. And I found that in those times, I could have very deep conversations with people about my life. For example, I often shared with them my marriage with Deborah, and I found total acceptance. I found that my relationship to people strengthened, and I felt I was part of the community. May we have the courage to sit with our loneliness and then act, to become one as a community. Blessed be, and may it be so.
Good morning, I'm Reverend Sarah. I use she, her pronouns. Join me in our opening words. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Now rise in body or spirit to sing with us. Come sing a song with me, number 346. The words will be on the screen.
I'm Assistant DRE Nico Van Ostrand, and my pronouns are they, them. There's a story we share often here based on a story written by Lynn Ungar about a gathering at a UU congregation, not unlike our own, where everyone, children and adults, were asked to create a paper heart. One child worked really hard to create the most perfect, beautiful heart he could. It even had glitter in the shape of diamonds all around the outside. As he was helping clean up, he noticed the heart of one woman who was sitting nearby at his table. The heart that she had made was a mish-mash mess of all different colors and had pieces that were ripped and torn glued all over it. Parts of it were wrinkled and crinkled, and there was even a little hole in it. Now, the child saw this heart and thought, maybe she just needs a little help with her heart. Maybe arts and crafts aren't her strong suit. But when he offered his assistance, the woman merely smiled and explained that there was nothing wrong with her heart. It just showed all the things that had happened to her in her life. Right there, she said, pointing to a shiny green gem, showed when her heart was super happy, like when she made a new friend or when her children were born. And all of the times she was proud of things she had done or proud of people she loved. And right there, she said, pointing to a rip, showed the sad times in her life, when her heart didn't feel so happy, when her heart even felt a little broken. The woman told the child about times in her life when she felt so sad. The time her best friend got really sick, the times when someone did something to hurt her feelings, when someone she loved died. In fact, every time a person comes into my life that I care about, she explained, they take a piece of my heart with them. This worried the child, thinking that if someone had to give away parts of their heart every time they met someone, well, what happens if you give it all away, he asked. You will be left with nothing for a heart. No, I won't, responded the woman with a smile, because you see, they give me a piece of their heart as well. The child looked down at his perfect, beautiful heart with the glitter and the designs he worked so hard to make, and he looked again at the woman's mish-mashed heart with the jagged colors, the rips, and the wrinkles. Without hesitation, the child ripped a piece off his perfect heart and handed it to the woman. And I share this story with you this morning because this story reminds me that sharing pieces of ourselves with one another is what we do in this community. It is how we welcome one another. Here's a piece of me. May I hold a piece of you. Whether we've been part of this community for decades or joined worship for the first time today, when we show up with our full and open hearts, ready to receive one another in all our complexities, in all of our joys and our sorrows, it is a blessing. It is now time to sing as our registered children and youth counselors head out to the social hall for summer RE programming. And for those of you of all ages who are worshiping in the sanctuary this morning, please do join us in the social hall after service to make your own mishmash heart and enjoy cake in celebration of Reverend Jack and Reverend Sarah. So please rise in body or spirit to sing Go Lift It Up, number 1057 in the teal paperback hymnal.
Join me in a time of meditation and prayer. Do what you need to be comfortable for this time of reflection. If that means getting up and moving around, we welcome that. If that means shifting in your seat to find a connection to the earth, we welcome that. If closing your eyes feels good, we welcome it. Take a breath at your own pace and rest in the shelter of this community. When we are weary, when we are angry, when we are hyped up, when we are teary with joy, we come together. We bring our worries, our curiosity. We bring ourselves to this place, to these people. We bring our whole broken selves and seek welcome, seek belonging. Every time we come through these doors or click that link, we hope to be embraced by the beloved community that we aspire to be. Every time someone comes through these doors or clicks that link, we are given another opportunity to live into our values of courage, reverence, and compassion to build that community that we want to be welcomed into. Every time we come into this space, virtual or in person, we strive to be ready to receive one another with all of our complexities, opening our hearts to each other. This morning, we hold members and friends of our community who are suffering, who are struggling, who are joyful. We hold them all. And into and out of this silence, I invite you to share the names of those you hold in your hearts so we can hold them all together. We hold them all in this embrace of this beloved, beloved community. Amen.
The offering today stays right here to help us meet our two-pronged mission of growing our souls and serving the world in love. There are several ways to contribute to the offering. We will be passing a plate. You can drop a check in the mail or in the drop box outside the office, or you can text to give, and you'd find a link on the chat box if you're on Zoom. Otherwise, if you're here in person, the link is in your, or the information is in your order of service. However you contribute, thank you for your generosity and your faith in this life that we lead together.
Our first reading is from Priya Parker's book, The Art of Gathering. Why do we gather? We gather to solve problems we can't solve on our own. We gather to celebrate, to mourn, to mark transitions. We gather to make decisions. We gather because we need one another. We gather to show strength. We gather to honor and acknowledge. We gather to build companies and schools and neighborhoods. We gather to welcome, and we gather to say goodbye. The second reading is from Kimberly Blaser, a poem called About Standing in Kinship. We all have the same little bones in our foot, 26 with funny names like navicular. Together they build something strong. Our foot arch, a pyramid holding us up. The bones don't get cast when they break. We tape them, one flange to its neighbor, for support. Other things like sorrow work that way too. We find healing in the leaning, in the closeness. Our feet have 1/4 of all the bones in our body. Maybe we should give more honor to feet and to all those tiny but blessed cogs in the world, communities, the forgotten architecture of friendship.
Take a moment, look around. You are in a room filled with people, the exact combination of which will probably never happen again. We live in a world usually buzzing with connectivity, and for more than 2 years now, those connections have been challenged. They have morphed and changed. They don't look or feel the same. Yet we are still a people who long for connection and a sense of belonging. This desire for connection is constant, even though the ways in which this desire presents itself is constantly changing. And as Mina pointed out in her opening words, COVID has made the transition from loneliness to community that much harder. Today, we are also connected by a spirit of sadness and pain. Already this summer, there have been horrendous Supreme Court rulings and tragic yet preventable mass shootings. Every part of me wants to scream out in anger and pain, that I want the suffering to stop. But as I've learned from my study of Buddhism, suffering is inevitable and beyond our control. What we can control is our reaction to the suffering. The injustices around us might inspire us to action, and in that action lies some sense of healing or connection, purpose, belonging. At some point, all of us in this room have experienced a deep sense of loss. Maybe it was the loss of a loved one or the crumbling apart of a relationship. Maybe it was clinical depression or the letting go of a childhood dream. While these losses that we carry have particularity, they can also serve as another conduit of connection. Look to your left. Look to your right. The people sitting next to us have also experienced loss and sadness, beauty and joy. They love and are loved. They yearn for peace. They are searching for purpose and meaning, just like you. They are all owners of mishmash hearts, like in Nico's story, constantly giving pieces of their hearts to others. And just like you, they are part of the interconnected web of existence. In the words of my late friend Hortense McLeod, we are beings that create stories to tell of that longing. Our stories may be different, but the longing is the same. On this day, I want to tell you one of those stories of longing from Persian poet, Islamic scholar, and Sufi mystic Rumi. Once upon a time, there was a mouse and a frog who were the very best of friends. The mouse spent most of her time on land, but the frog could spend her time on the land or in the water. She felt comfortable in both worlds because she was an amphibian. These two would meet regularly on the riverbank because it was the border between their two worlds. They would talk and talk and talk and listen and listen and listen. They were the best of friends, and everyone that knew them sort of secretly thought they had known each other for multiple lifetimes. In their conversations, they held nothing back. They shared all their secrets, their fears, their dreams, their joys, their sorrows. But the mouse was land-bound, unable to enter the frog's world. Sometimes they would go weeks without seeing each other, and the mouse, she missed the frog enough to concoct a risky plan. She tied a string around her ankle and then tied the other end around the ankle of the frog. In this way, they would be able to communicate their need for the other with a simple tug. As you can probably imagine, this simple plan wasn't perfect. It had a few snags. Sometimes the string would get tangled up with weeds or rocks or fish, causing much confusion and dismay. But in general, they were glad to have a system in place so that they could communicate when they were far apart. But that wasn't the only snag in their plan. Mice happen to have many natural predators, including some who happen to be able to fly and swoop and dart. And one day, a very hungry raven saw the mouse. Well, the mouse also spotted the raven and ran and hid and ran some more. But ravens are very cunning, and they are very fast. Eventually, the raven swooped down, snatched the mouse with her talons, and flew away. Unbeknownst to the raven, she had caught a mouse and a frog. People who were standing on the ground far below were so puzzled as to why there was a frog connected by a string to a raven flying through the air. And they asked, how did a raven catch a frog? Frogs can hide underwater. And the frog answered as she flew through the air, it is the force of friendship. In this story, Rumi is teaching us about the dangers of friendship and connection. Some of you might be wondering, what kind of story is this? Are you trying to convince me not to make friends so that I never risk getting hurt? No, that is not the lesson of this story. The story teaches us that if the raven comes for one of our friends, we are affected by the raven too. Whether it is a raven of sadness, or bullying, or addiction, or loss, it is hard to see one of our friends affected by it. But if we weren't connected to them, we wouldn't even know what was happening. And we wouldn't know how we could support that friend. If the frog and the mouse hadn't been connected by a string, the frog wouldn't have known that the mouse was in danger. And just imagine what would have happened if the mouse had been connected to 100 frogs. I don't think the raven would have quite been so successful. Which leads me to wax poetic about our UU congregations. Whether you call them spiritual or religious communities, they are places where we make meaning together. Author Richard Wright went even further and said, "Our churches are where we dip our tired bodies in cool springs of hope, where we retain our wholeness and humanity despite the blows of death." In our church's very own ambitious purpose statement that we say every week, we declare our intention. Together, we grow our souls and serve the world in love. This purpose is aspirational, and we don't aspire to be a place where individuals pursue these goals on their own. Our aspiration is to be a community pursuing these goals together. As Priya Parker reminds us, why do we gather? We gather to solve problems we can't solve on our own. We gather to celebrate, to mourn, to mark transitions, to make decisions because we need one another. We gather to show strength, to honor, to acknowledge, to welcome, and to say goodbye. And that community here is constantly changing. Every year, our congregations welcome new members and lose others, whether through resignation or relocation or even death. How do we continue to stay open to the community that we're becoming when a new person comes and ties one of their strings to us? One helpful practice is to remind yourselves every single week that you might be someone's mooring point. Many of us are sailing along the waters of life. Never harbor or port have we known. Be sure that you don't have your backs turned away from the open water, only paying attention to those who are already moored. For the past 10 months here at WBUUC, we have been utilizing a new form of social hour for this very reason. We want to notice who is approaching from the open water, looking for space on the dock. In our social hour, our participants go into randomized small groups for a short conversation. That way, everyone has an equal playing field. Veteran members, as I call them, and newcomers alike, will both be in a group where they don't necessarily know everyone. Using an anti-oppression lens, this is the way for our veteran members to give up the privilege of only ever being in groups of people that they already know. They are asked to step out of their comfort zone and into the courage zone needed to meet new people. And that way, they'll be more aware of who is looking for a mooring point. Another helpful practice is to remember what it was like for you when you were new to a community, whether it was this one or a different one. We've all been new somewhere before, right? Why did you initially come to this UU community? Were you buffeted by the blows of death or depression, loneliness or isolation? Many of our newcomers and visitors come to our communities from a place of need or crisis. Many come needing support. I know I did. When I first sought out a UU community, things were relatively stable for me, but I knew that I was about one crisis away from a desperate need for a spiritual community that was bigger than me, that could hold me and support me. As it turns out, I arrived in the nick of time. About 4 months after landing in a supportive UU congregation, I separated from my partner of 3.5 years, and I was devastated. I needed a community to support me as I picked myself up again. I needed words of encouragement to remind me of my value, worth, and inherent dignity. And I needed the reminder that I was not alone. Many others were dealing with their own grief and sadness, but it felt easier to do that work when I didn't feel alone. I felt connected to the sadness and the joy of others, and I got through it. So many people come to our doors desperate to find a connection and a sense of belonging, a place to hang their hat. And I'm reminded of Kimberly Blazer's poem and those 26 bones in our foot with funny names like navicular. She says, together they build something strong. Our foot arch, a pyramid holding us up. The bones don't get casts when they break. We tape them, one phalange to its neighbor for support. Other things like sorrow work that way too. Find healing in the leaning, in the closeness. Our feet have 1/4 of all the bones in our body. Maybe we should give more honor to feet and to all those tiny but blessed cogs in the world, communities, the forgotten architecture of friendship. I know that sometimes it can be overwhelming for us as a church when we realize how many people are out there who need a safe landing space, a place to tie their strings. But how can we possibly fail to pay forward the welcome and the safe space that we first found when we arrived? The challenge is there for us, waiting to rise up. How can we adapt our sense of welcome to accommodate this deep desire for belonging that is almost universally felt? This need for belonging and connection is deep within us, and the need itself can be profound. After the past 2 years, this need is even more relevant and desperately felt than usual. And Rumi teaches us that our connections might ensnare us. They might break our hearts. We might not even notice that our friend has been snatched by the raven of loss, grief, disease, or depression until we feel the tug of the string. But by all means, tie the strings. Clear the gunk away from your mooring points so that others can find them easily. Take the risk of connection. It is worth it. Blessed be, and amen. Our final hymn is With Heart and Mind, number 300 in our gray hardback hymnal. Please rise in body or spirit.
Please join me in the closing words. May peace dwell within our hearts and understanding in our minds. May courage steel our will and love of truth forever guide us.